Welcome to the second session on AI today. Our session is sandwiched between the very fascinating session that came just before in French and before another session which will be on generative AI for businesses. So in a way, they complement one another. Clearly, we've hit the road of artificial intelligence, all of us. And we all know that it will take us far. That's about the extent of our certainty. How far, we don't know, and where we're heading is unclear. But we have a say. AI doesn't drive itself yet, as far as we know. And we can't let the Magnificent Seven and their counterparts in China decide for us. When we look ahead, the most general question is, how good is AI going to get? But there are two ways of understanding this question. The first and most frequent construal is, of what cognitive feats will AI eventually be capable? The second and most significant construal is this: how good will it be for us? We cannot simply assume that what's good for AI is good for humanity, as some people seem to think, and nor, of course, should we assume the opposite, as others believe. We can try to strike a balance. We can recommend that we reap the benefits of AI while preventing or limiting the damages it can inflict. But that doesn't help. It doesn't provide any hint of how to approach such a goal. We must do better, and we can. AI's achievements and effects so far are a rich body of evidence, of case studies, so to speak, that we can use to assess whether we're moving in the right direction or should correct the present trajectory in small or big ways. There's a complication, of course, an important one. The directions that AI can in fact take are not entirely preordained. They depend on what scientists and engineers will discover by intent or by serendipity in the short term and in the fullness of time. As always in science, we sometimes find what we have been looking for and sometimes not. And what we find is sometimes that we were looking for and sometimes not. But this should not dissuade us from trying to gain as clear a perspective as possible on where AI can take us and where we want it to take us. The panelists on the present session, as those on the next one and on the previous one, will provide a wide spectrum of perspectives on this issue. By ways of introduction, let me offer a simple, indeed simplistic conceptual map of the kind of concrete questions that need to be raised. There are, on the sunny side of the AI road, achievements and promises that are promoted. And on the other, shady side, pitfalls or downsides that are flagged. Regarding achievements and promises, I suggest a 2-by-2 table. On one dimension, some are real or realistic. Some are unsupported by present achievements and available ideas. On the other dimension, some are prima facie beneficial, some dangerous, risky, or outright toxic. Examples that combine realism and a priori beneficence might be smart search engines, scientific assistance, medical assistance, legal assistance, driving assistance. This was brought out very well in the previous session by Mr. Azat's discussion. Examples that combine realism and risk or toxicity are near-perfect chatbots, especially of the AI companion kind, as well as AI poets, novelists, composers, and so on. On the side of beneficial but unsupported promises and exaggerated achievements, explainable AGI, artificial general intelligence, safe level 5 self-driving vehicles. I know that some people are going to disagree with me. On the side of dangerous but mercifully unsupported systems, black box AGI, full autonomous AI physicians, teachers, judges, policemen, therapists, politicians, CEOs. Concerning pitfalls or downsides, I propose to distinguish between predicaments that have no solution but need to be faced as lucidly as possible so as to be mitigated as best we can, and challenges which can and therefore should be actively taken up. Examples of the first sort, predicaments, might be autonomous lethal weapons and the new battlefield, cybersecurity, increased inequalities within and between nations, and, to use a word which is not admitted in polite society in such places, dehumanization. Examples of challenges which must be met head-on are respect of privacy, of intellectual property, of simple factual truth, some degree of transparency as far as it doesn't contradict the very idea of AI, environmental impact, de-skilling, and last but not least, fabrication of false persons. This last example is a case where we could have imposed from day one a total ban on all technologies that would contribute to this deadly attack on trust, something analogous in the social domain to nuclear weapons for biological survival. It was perfectly clear that these technologies would lead to the pleasant hell of fakery and AI companions, and perfectly clear, at least outside of Silicon Valley, that it would be disastrous. But we can and we must claw our way back to sanity and trust. Some of these examples are controversial, and each of them and countless others call for careful consideration. Two things stand out, though, it seems to me. One is that while debates on AI in general are necessary, they tend to be inconclusive. Progress is more likely when the discussion is restricted to specific areas such as medicine, education, warfare, health, justice, political decision-making, etc. And the other is that innovation per se is not a sovereign good, and therefore it need not be protected regardless of cost. Regulation may slow it down, but good regulation does it for a reason. When innovation and regulation work hand in hand, humanity benefits. So with that, those introductory remarks, we'll now move on to the panel. I will not introduce the speakers. You have their bios on in the brochure, and we'll go in the order in which people are seated, actually, and they each have about 6 or 7 minutes, and I will be a terribly rigorous chairman. So please, François Barrault first.
Thank you, Daniel. We have 6-7 minutes to discuss over very large topics. I will not use ChatGPT to do the synthesis. I'm not a robot. I'm not a chatbot. I'm just a human looking at life. First of all, I'd like to thank Thierry Montbrial, because this year, I've been to 20 forums like that, and we had 3 days on AI and 3 panels on things other than AI. This time, we have 3 panels on AI, and the rest are things that matters, you know, what's going on in the world. So, Thierry, thank you for resisting on this wave so that we can enrich our thinking process. Why are we talking about AI everywhere? I see 3 reasons. First of all, the explosion of technology. You've seen that everywhere. The second is AI has been used as anxiogenious themes for all the people going on TV. You know, when the world is fine, nobody watches TV. When fear generates a lot of interest, and that's something which has been the last 2-3 years really worries me. And the last is the popularization of ChatGPT, and we'll talk later on. On the first factor, when you look at what's going on in technology, it's really what we call an ecosystem. Ecosystem now is used everywhere. As soon as you have a group of 10 people, we call this ecosystem, which is as a I'm a scientist, so I like precising. Ecosystem is when you have nodes or community. If you take one out, the group collapses. So technology is three things. The first one is hardware. The second is transmission, telecoms. And the third is software. When you look at hardware, there is new Moore's law. Instead of doubling the capacity every 18 months, now you have very small chips, quantum chips, as an example. You have edge computing, you know, the new doodles of the world. You have quantum computer arriving, and the power is going to be multiplied by 100 to 1 million in few years. And this revolution, the fifth revolution, is absolutely amazing. Second, transmission with the 5G plus, the 6G, with the fiber and satellite, will have a total coverage in the world in 3-4 years with a very, very high speed and very small latency. And last, the software. So you create data, you transmit data, and you compute the data with all the new algorithm, with the new LLMs, large language models, or new LQM, large quantitative models. There is a huge transformation of the treatment. So the combination of those three pillars make the technology absolutely amazing. The second part of why we talk about AI, a lot of things has been said about AI. Personally, I do AI since 1982, so I'm a kind of veteran. During 40 years, my diploma was in my cupboard. The last 2 years, I've been very popular because we tried with few colleagues, including in our institute, to educate. So AI has been used by some people to go on TV and fear, you know, the Cold War is back, the robots will take over. I like to say never. It will never, never, never happen. And then the last piece is ChatGPT. Who has not used ChatGPT in the room? We need to talk then. ChatGPT is quite new. It appears in 2018. Now we are on ChatGPT 4. So ChatGPT 1 was a 3-year-old kid, 2 a teen, 3 was a college student, and now is more a PhD. I was lucky enough to see ChatGPT N+1 and N+2, and let me tell you a story. A few weeks ago, a US friend came to Paris. He loves paintings, arts, good food. So I asked ChatGPT to do a program. And they say, oh, we go to the Louvre, we go to the Musée Rodin, we go to Taiwan, we go to this, to that. I respond to ChatGPT, sorry, ChatGPT, but this is nuts. Museums are closed on Mondays and nice restaurant. His response was, sorry, but my level of information is not that accurate. So ChatGPT, don't believe ChatGPT, because instead of going to a corpus of information, you know, on medicines, you go to Dalloz for laws. It's all you can eat without selection. ChatGPT N+1 will be different. Instead of going everywhere, it will work by corpus of information selected, and there will be algorithm that will check 20 times. So we will move from 40% accuracy to 99%. ChatGPT N+2 is very interesting because I believe we'll have about 100% of accuracy, but there will be an avatarization of the human being. As an example, the words we use, the structure, our emotions, our story, the things we like, we don't like. So ChatGPT N+2 will be a chief of staff, but at the end of the day, you will make the call. As you say, there is plenty of examples to talk about AI. We have a big event in our institute, the 47th edition. We are not talking about AI. We are just talking about us as humans. And the theme is Tech for Citizens, to see how it impacts our life, our kids' education, the way we think, we entertain, we learn. 2 examples to conclude so that you can understand. I was in the US the other day, and we had a board in a company, and the HR person was very late to hire 50 people because she said it took me ages to do 50 job spec. So with ChatGPT, there was the chief scientist of Google was there. He said, OK, let's put all what you want into the system. So in 10 minutes, we had 50 job spec sent to LinkedIn, to everywhere. Her reaction was fear. What am I going to do? I'm going to lose my job. Saying, no, you will spend more time with the candidates. So the evolution of ChatGPT will be the end of task-oriented jobs, and it will give us a lot of time to communicate between ourselves with the right brain. A last example, so that you can figure out what's going on. When you go to a doctor, 30 minutes, there is 20 minutes of pathology, analysis, symptomatic analogy. He asks you how do you feel, that it hurts. 5 minutes of pathology, which is, he goes into his memory to see the case he knows. If not, you go to a specialist. And 5 minutes of small talks. How is your mother, your cat, or whatever? What is amazing, in my view, human being invents very sophisticated machines, cars, train, planes. You will never take a car if your tires are flat or you have no electricity or petrol. In a plane, there is about 4,000 control, and a train 300. The only weak signal when we wake up is we're tired, we don't feel good, it's too late. So the medicine, and we're working in one of our company on analyzing the magnetic resonance of the body, as an example. When you do a RAM, it analyzes everything on your body. So if you have a cancer, your organ will do beep beep, but if it makes toot toot, that means you have a kind of tumor. So we can imagine that in the near future, we'll have some small sensors that will analyze real time all the KPIs of your body. So you will come to the doctor with a dashboard. He knows exactly what he has, what you have. And then the symptomatic analysis will last 1 minute, the pathology 4 minutes, and there will be either another patient or we'll have small work. So to conclude, AI will simplify our life. The task-oriented, boring stuff will go like that, and it will give more opportunity to connect ourselves and to create a better world, between humans. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, François. That's the sunny side of the AI road, which we might discuss later on. Now, His Excellency Omran Sharaf has the floor. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for having me here, and it's such an honor and pleasure to be here to speak about a very, very important topic. For me, AI is just the beginning of bigger challenges and opportunities that emerging and critical technologies will be bringing to nations, to regions, and to geopolitics. Earlier we spoke about it from a technical point of view. Today I would like to, from my side, I would like to focus a little bit more on the political side of emerging technology and critical technology, which includes AI. In the past, technology played a vital role in shaping the geopolitical landscape in the background. Today, with AI and other upcoming emerging technologies, that role has shifted to being in the front line. Why I'm saying this is because in the past, advanced technologies were only focused or within the reach and the capacity and capability of state actors. But today we have non-state actors who actually having access to this technology, developing this technology, and having a say in how this technology gets shaped down the line. So because of this, the impact on the equation that defines geopolitics has changed. Technology such as AI and others, whether it's genomes, whether it's quantum, and there was a recent breakthrough with quantum, will change ways nations deal with each other and work with each other. And AI is an excellent platform or opportunity for us to learn from it and how to prepare. In general, as nations, we've been very reactive when it came to actually dealing with AI, I believe. Some people are panicking, some people are not. And I think there are much more opportunities that will bring than challenges. The question is, how do we govern it? Do we regulate it, or do we nurture it for it to go in the right direction? And these debates need to happen at, I guess, multilateral platforms and bilateral discussions, in which nations have to be discussing this, but at the same time not hinder or stop the progress of development in this important field that brings a lot of benefits to humanity. That takes me to the next point. When it comes to also nations working together, collaborating, and the relationship that being established between them, countries will have to revise their approach in establishing relationships with countries, with blocs, or even working with countries that they might not see eye to eye with because of AI and other emerging technologies. The way that these technologies get applied and used are getting more complicated. So in the past, it was very easy to speak about a nation's political system, a nation's society's setup, the demography, and so on, and building kind of that relationship or the ties with other nations, whether it's strategic or transactional. Today, with emerging technologies, that has changed a lot. That requires more depth, better understanding of other countries' point of views. The reason why I'm saying is this, because the risks are too high of having very diverged discussions or multipolar discussions when it comes to emerging technologies such as AIs. Why? Because they'll have different set of code of ethics coming up, different guidelines, different blocks not working together. That is very dangerous. And the fact that this technology is very complex actually requires us to work together. Because actually, from an efficiency point of view, it's more efficient and effective for us to collaborate rather than to have different blocks not working together on this important and critical capability. So this is just my intervention that I'd like to start with, and I think I'd like to give the opportunity for us to have more focus on the questions that will be upcoming. With that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So you raised the issue of emergent technologies. We haven't yet talked about converging technologies, but it's in the background, and we may go back to that. But first, we will hear Professor Lee Tiedrich. Lee, please.
Thank you, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting me here. And I have to say at the outset, I wear a lot of different hats, and today I'm expressing my personal views and not speaking on behalf of the US government or any other institution. To pick up on the comments of some of my colleagues, I really want to kind of hone in on the governance issues with respect to AI. I think it's fair to say the AI technology has developed so quickly, and policymakers around the globe are working at breakneck speed to try to catch up. And it really is a situation where the policymakers are leaning in. And to come back to some of the points that Daniel and François made at the outset, at the end of the day, the goal really is, AI is a technology that has so much potential, and how do we capitalize on all the benefits for society, not just both economic benefits, but also social good benefits. But then, as you also said at the outset, there are lots of potential harms and risks, and how do we come up with structures in order to mitigate those harms and risks and try to protect society. And what we've seen, it's still a story that's playing out, how to do this. But I think one thing that's become really clear is that it's a global and multidisciplinary endeavor. As somebody with a background in engineering who practiced law, I feel very strongly that it has to be multidisciplinary. We need to have laws and policies that work, that companies can operationalize, governments can operationalize and work in practice. And because of the connected nature of our world, it has become a global game. And we are seeing that certain jurisdictions have really jumped out ahead in terms of the regulatory approach. I'm sure many of you from Europe are familiar with the EU-AI Act, which is one of the landmark legislation that was passed earlier this year. And it's a very comprehensive set of legislation. The EU-AI Office and CENELAC, the European Standards Organizations, are working on trying to implement this. China has actually been pretty proactive in terms of adopting AI regulation. Other jurisdictions, including the United States, the UK, many Asian countries have taken a more deregulatory approach. In the US, about a year ago, President Biden had signed the AI executive order. We're going to have to wait and see what President Trump decides to do. And because of the need to create some level of harmonization, what I've seen through my work in the last couple years is that the multilateral organizations are playing a really important role in trying to create some level of harmonization. I think where we are today is different countries are going to have different laws, which is their prerogative. They need to adopt laws that fit their cultures and society, but we want to have some level of harmonization. And just to give you some examples of what we're seeing, I mean, the G7 has played a really important role with the Hiroshima AI process. They adopted principles, they've adopted a code of conduct. Now they're working at setting up a voluntary monitoring scheme, and they're working very closely with the OECD, who you'll hear from on the next panel. We've also seen a series of safety summits that have been held, starting with the UK at Bletchley Park, and China attended that, as well as Western countries, so it's another basis of collaboration. And through that, under the leadership of Yoshua Bengio, there is a scientific committee that is working on scientific reports to try to come up with some consensus around the science. Different countries have adopted different safety institutes, and unsurprisingly, the UN has really stepped in to play an important role. UNESCO adopted an agreement in 2021 around AI with, recently with the Global Digital Compact. The UN AI High-Level Advisory Board and others are going to be working toward establishing a scientific panel, and also be working on trying to coordinate governance. So, I think really has evolved into a global and multidisciplinary game. And I think part of what this also means for companies is, I always say to people, I can't tell you what the legal landscape is going to look like a year from now, but what I do feel comfortable saying is that it's going to change. So I think companies need to also have very much of a global multidisciplinary approach. At the design phase, you need to have your design and your engineers talking to the law, policy people, ethics people, and it has to be a continuous process to account for change. One of the issues that I've been working on, wearing my Global Partnership on AI OECD hat, is the impact of AI on the environment. And again, this also presents a lot of challenges and opportunities. Through the work that we've done through GPAI OECD, we've produced reports on how AI can be an agent to help abate some of the climate issues that we've been encountering, as well as biodiversity loss. Examples are using AI to try to improve the electric grid, try to optimize the use of renewables, smart agriculture. There are lots of great examples. But all you have to do is pick up the papers, and there are reports about the extreme energy demands of AI systems. So again, how do we optimize the benefits, mitigate the risks? And I think it all comes down to science. One of the things that we need are better measurement techniques, so we can both measure the benefits, measure the impacts.
Thank you so much, Lee. So perhaps we should have a short discussion among the panelists before we open the floor. So maybe how about the following idea? I mean, does everyone in the panel agree with my idea and the idea of the previous speaker too in session before, that what AI is good at is providing assistance to all sorts of tasks, while I think, at least it's my opinion, and I'd like you to say if you agree, whether the ideal of creating an entirely autonomous thinking machine is both unreachable and undesirable. And people in the industry who talk about AGI, very clear, most of them very clearly have this goal in sight. They think that what AI is heading for is creating essentially fully autonomous cognitive machines equivalent to, if not better than, us. And I disagree. I think it's first unfeasible. I don't think we have anything like the ideas to reach that goal, and it's undesirable. So with this provocative statement, I would like to invite you to react. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think one thing, I think I said this last year, the competition is very unfair. When you look at the speed of treatment of information is speed light, 300 kilometers per second. If I touch my iPhone, I did this last year, so I'm not going to repeat it. I have sensors here. The speed of the information going to my brain is 60 meters per second. The speed in my brain is 100 meters per second. So let's assume you're writing a thesis. You arrive in the National Library. You need to look at 10,000 pages in 24 volumes. It will take you, months.
A lifetime.
A lifetime. AI will look at LLMs and LQMs. We look at all the information. We'll synthesize of it, and with ChatGPT and +2 equivalent, we'll write you exactly if this was you. So my view on that is all the task-oriented things, which are boring, are going to be outsourced. So Emman says this, I don't think job will disappear. I think it will create lots of new jobs. I gave the examples of the doctors. It's a question of evolution also of the technology. And one point also we need to understand is when you give toys to kids, you don't know what they're going to do with this. Remember, the first SMS I made in Japan was an emergency system for people. And the teens who are very shy use this SMS system to communicate to each other. So 14 girls, 14 boys, they try to communicate. And SMS was then sent to Europe by Bouygues, by the way, and SMS became a major communication. So nobody can predict how AI will be used because it's self-developing. And at the end of the day, and I think you mentioned this, Daniel, we make the call. AI will be never more than a super chief of staff that will bring options on things, but at the end, we will decide.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree with you. Sir.
So I do believe, as I mentioned earlier, AI will not just be an assistant to us in making things easier. I really think it will redefine way nations will work together. The capacity and capability they will have, strategic ones, will be defined by that. Nations having certain challenges, national challenges related to the environment, to the food, to resources, water resources, will rely on AI to help them manage these challenges and find solutions. Nations that are facing issues with the dry climate, same thing. The trade and logistics systems will be impacted by AI, and more efficiency will come into play. Healthcare systems, biotechnology, will all be affected by that. So I think really if you look at it from a much bigger picture, it will redefine the geopolitical landscape. There are challenges, but I think the benefits and the opportunities are much bigger than the challenges. I think we need to focus on building partnerships and between nations and addressing each country's needs and challenges, because let's be realistic, each nation needs to serve their national interests at the end of the day. And with AI, I think it will be a force that will force nations to work together to serve their national interests. If you look at it also from a responsible behavior point of view, countries will have different definitions initially. How do we define responsible behavior in AI? Why? Because countries interpret things slightly differently. The thresholds are different. And one example, for example, when it comes to defining, let's say, extremism. Some countries have different thresholds for extremism versus others. Why? Because their demography, their system, their societal structure is very different than other nations. In a country that has more than 200 nationalities, living together, working together, different cultures, different background, will have different tolerance level to extremism than a country that has less diverse combination of people. How do I translate that into technology and applications? At the same time, make sure that I work with partnering nations and understanding that difference. And then, again, bringing transparency into it, bringing responsible behavior into it, and putting the safeguards for that responsible behavior. It's a very difficult question to answer.
Right, right. Thank you very much. Yes, it really raises the issue before I ask Lee to react. One talks a lot about AI ethics or maybe AI soft law, and that's usually directed to the people who develop the systems. But there's also a matter of who uses the systems and how. So that's almost all of us in our private lives and in our professional lives. And of course, we are bound to ethics as well. But in order to behave ethically with our AI tools, we need to understand AI better. We collectively, people need to be educated to what AI is, what AI can do, what you should ask from AI, and so as to use it ethically, just as we use ethically as far as we can. At least we have ethical codes for driving cars, for using weapons and all of that. It's the same for AI, and that aspect, that dimension of AI ethics by the user, by the end user, is, I think, underdeveloped. It's one of the challenges that I think we have to meet. Please, Lee.
Yeah, I think building on those comments, it's important to keep in mind people use the term AI, and it doesn't refer to one thing. From a technological standpoint, there are lots of different types of technology that can be considered AI. You've got natural language processing, machine learning. So there's a variety of different technologies, and every day it seems like new technology is developing. And then also kind of building on this conversation, there are lots of different use cases. Some of the more benign use cases are personal assistants that help with scheduling. Obviously, as you start moving it into the criminal justice system or granting loans to people or using it in the medical context, the risks get higher. And I think it's really important to sort of break it down. I call it ethics and compliance by design, both at the policy level as well as at the individual company level, and make really good choices informed by ethics on how do we want to use this, looking at the tools that we have today and the tools that we'll continue to develop in terms of standards, risk management frameworks on if we're going to use this tool, how can we mitigate against the risks? Human oversight, testing, validation are really important ways that tools that we can use to mitigate risks. And I think one of the things that we'll need to develop and is in the process of developing is standards. So that I think will also help give people more comfort on using a certain tool for certain purposes, should not be as risky. And I think these are all things we're going to see develop over the next couple of years.
Wonderful. I think we seem to converge on this idea of we need a lot of human intelligence in order to make intelligent use of AI. That's one way of summing up what we've just, I think, agreed upon. Now, we've left, thanks to the excellent chairmanship, we have 15 minutes for the general discussion. So you first, yes, and then you, and then others, and you. Please, sir. No, the one before. Behind you. No, you're, yes, yes. Please identify yourselves and wait for the mic to show up. Microphone, microphone, no? Yes?
Thank you. My name is Krishnamurthy from Indonesia. My question is to Excellency Mr. Sharaf. I would like to learn what is your experience, your own country experience, how you use AI to increase the productivity of your people and at the same time maintaining the ethical and cultural guidance for using it. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you for that question. I mean, it's a little bit too early to say, how far we've got with that because the UAE has been very engaged in this area since 2017, and even before that with different entities, organizations, positions established focused on that. So when it comes to governing and building capacity and capability, we have good experience as a country. We have a university that's dedicated for AI. We have a private sector that is working on cutting-edge AI-related technology like G42. We have a ministry focused on AI. We've been very engaged at multilateral discussions with regards to the governance of the AI sector and how do we come up with international norms and guidelines with regards to AI and the code of ethics. So we are, I believe the UAE is a leading nation when it comes to that. Now, when it comes to the technology, we have, as I said, the private sector that works on it. We have our academic sector, different universities that works in this area. But has it been fully translated into applications? I think it's work in progress, not just in the UAE, but globally. All the things that we've seen so far has been still in the demo phase or the qualification phase, which sooner or later will become fully operational, I believe. So I'm talking about AI from a point of view as in not just normal, regular machine learning. I'm talking about advanced, cutting-edge stuff that's been mentioned earlier on this panel. So I think globally we are not there yet to be fully operational, but we are on the path, and it will happen soon. And I really think our technological development in this field and our legal governance development will happen in parallel. I don't think one we cannot stop the development, the technical one, until we catch up legally or from let's say a governance point of view. So that will happen in parallel. And I think the more divergence or polarization happens in these political discussions related to AI, the more we will fall back compared to the development that's happening technically. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Next, you, sir.
My name is Meir Shitrit. I'm from Israel. Israel is one of the most advanced countries in the world with AI and technology. I know that AI creates a lot of opportunities and possibilities in the future, which are totally unbelievable. Israel, for example, was the country in which all the new artificial intelligence of Apple had been developed in Israel, all of it. So I know many people in Israel who deal with AI. It creates a lot of possibilities for the human being. But on the other side, it creates a very high risk to the human beings. Think Stephen Hawking, Bill Gates, Elon Musk. The three of them said that AI is representing a danger to the existence of the human being in the future. And they're right, in my opinion, because there is the possibilities and to act with AI are so huge and so unbelievable, because I've seen some, which I believe that we have to take steps how to control it. Today, there is no control over the AI. The companies which operated the AI didn't have any control over them. They do whatever they want. And I think the governments, which I'm sorry to say, most of the politicians do not understand high-tech and AI. And of course, artificial technology. It has a lot of advantages, but we have to put some limits. What they can do, what they cannot do. Because the possibilities are so huge. It's really unbelievable what you could do with AI. And there is a danger, in my opinion, there is a real danger if people will not control it. Therefore, I'm asking, what do you think should we do in order really to control that that the people who are operating the AI in the world would not pass the border, which is supposed not to pass?
Thank you. Yes, there's a lot of discussion on so-called existential risks, and I have my own opinion, but I'm only the chairman, not the panelist, so perhaps one of you would like to discuss this issue of control and existential risk.
Well, I think the policy, the global policy arena is looking at this issue, and people are divided on kind of the existential risk issue and how imminent that is. But what we are seeing is a lot of attention on the safety issues. For example, the EU AI Act bans certain type of AI within the EU, and that impacts any business, whether they're located in the EU or not, if they're doing business in the EU. For what they call high-risk AI systems, there's a lot of regulations, and all the standards are being adopted right now on data governance, risk governance, testing. Even in countries that are less regulated than the EU is, we're seeing the safety institutes being stood up. There was a summit in November in San Francisco hosted by the US Safety Institute, and part of what they're trying to do is figure out, how they can do testing of large language models. So it's a work in progress, and I think everyone is aware that there are risks here that need to be managed.
I have a lot to say. I must shut up. Sir, the question is yours, and then you. Yes, please.
There's a lady there who wants to.
Who's the lady there?
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be
Gotta give
the last
opportunities for the
one,
ladies
fourth
also.
one. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Volker Pertes from Germany. My question is triggered by Omran's presentation, and thank you for that and for all the others. I think you laid out that AI needs multilateral regulation because, as you said, we cannot discuss it in a multipolar setting, but also that it has to serve national interests. And you're working in a foreign ministry. So I wonder how AI actually does serve national foreign policies. For what I know about AI, and it is working on patterns, on regularities and irregularities, it should make foreign policies better in predictions, in foresight. But if I look at the reality in your region or any others, it doesn't seem we have become better in foresight. So do you think AI is already helping you, is useless, or will help you better? Thank you.
Good question.
Very good question. Well, I think, saying the very biased Emirati, that UAE has been very quite accurate in its assessment of what's happening in the region with regards to its foreign policy, I think, in general. Having said that, I do think, yes, AI will help us generate more accurate scenarios. There's no one scenario, when it comes to actually trying to foresight or assess what would happen in the future. Usually you come up with scenarios, multiple scenarios. So the accuracy of that scenario, of those scenarios that will be considered by policymakers will probably be more accurate, given that you'll be able to have access to more data and will be able to analyze more data faster. So this is kind of a natural way that it will come with it. But again, when I mentioned it from a political point of view, I didn't mention it just as it being applied in foreign policy, but I meant actually in the actual geopolitics and the landscape of that. And this is the big challenge. As I said, the reality is nations need to serve their national interest. But also there's another reality that AI is so complicated, it is so advanced, it is so easy relatively when it comes to applications to kind of build capacity around it from a software point of view if you have the right set of skills. It's not like building a nuclear reactor. You have to have facilities, like huge facilities. So it brings that complexity that sort of forces nations to put their differences aside and start working together.
Yeah. If I may add, the human mind is also a very complex machine, and it's not only a matter of computing power or speed. And as long as we don't entirely know how the human mind works, and we're very far from it, it'll be very hard to predict to what extent AI can approach human intelligence. I think they're both. I wrote a book in which I say that AI and human intelligence are a double enigma, two enigmas working one with the other, which does not prevent us from making progress, but should make us, relatively humble about futures like superintelligence and autonomy, responsibility, and so on. But let's move on to, yes, this
lady,
gentleman and this gentleman and the lady in the back, and that'll be it. We have 4 minutes left, so let's be brief.
I'll be brief. This person is Steve Erlanger from the New York Times, and I wonder what artificial intelligence will tell us about the future of HTS in Syria. That's a bit of a joke, particularly for the UAE. But we haven't talked about the military applications of AI, which I think are the most serious right now. You see it in Ukraine. You see Russians using it. You see drones that can smell. You see an entirely different form of warfare. You were talking about autonomous torpedoes, naval ships, et cetera.
Yes.
I know we don't have much time, but I mean, this is a topic I think that interests quite a lot of people, particularly people looking toward the next 5 or 6 years and the dangers to European security. Thank you.
I can answer to this.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a very good question. When you look at how AI works from a software point of view, including some quantum models, LLMs or LQMs, our brain can solve differential equation, level 4, 5. When you look at fixed trade, drug discovery, or when you look at new materials, you have so many data, so many entry points, that when you do this here, it makes this here. AI will bring an additional thinking process that can manage a lot of entry points and give options. So, in other words, AI will not solve the war. It will give a more proactive options how to solve the war and go to peace. Exactly when you want to discover new molecules, it takes 10 years, or if you want to create a new materials, it will take 7 years. The AI quantum base will allow the system to have much more entry point, exactly because we reach the capacity of the brain to solve multi-entry point problem. That's why I see it. But it will never solve the war.
Yeah. Nevertheless, the battlefield, the automatic battlefield is what I call the predicament. There's no solution to it. We just have to, face it as best we can. But it is a predicament, indeed. Hervé, and then the lady in the back. Hervé Mariton.
A remark and a question. The remark is with AI and as a whole with cyber issues. When we had the panel about Ukraine, we didn't really tackle the issue of cyber and AI attacks. Actually, what does Article 5 of NATO mean? You can have no attack on a territory, but a lot of attacks on AI and cyber systems in different states, and that can be a real problem in the future, obviously. The question is, we were talking about regulation in Europe, which actually has been criticized in France. Regulation in California has been hinted to before in the conversation. And we're in a movement today where obviously with the Trump administration, we're hearing a lot against regulation. So how do you answer to the fact that we're at a moment where we're asking more regulation, multilateral regulation and effort on regulation on AI, with obviously a tendency on the American administration, but obviously this also has consequences in Europe. We read a lot in France with companies saying against regulation as a whole, not particularly on AI, but we're in an anti-regulatory movement as a whole, coming from the States, but having also influence in Europe, and at a time when we need something on AI. So how do you imagine making progress on regulation in AI at a time when there's an overall feeling against regulation?
Lee, it's for you.
Well, I think we need to give the Trump administration an opportunity to get in and see what they're going to do. When during Trump's first term, he also had a couple AI executive orders. President Biden has used AI executive orders. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. I think coming back to something Daniel had said earlier, you know, regulation laws, policies can come in a lot of different ways. You can have what they call hard law, which is the EU approach. So they passed the EU AI Act, which is law. You can also have soft law approach in terms of standards. Something even the Biden administration has relied upon have been voluntary commitments from companies. You know, I think one thing that's going to be really important that will help with global harmonization is, you know, the global process working together to come up with common standards. And if we have that, countries that may prefer a more voluntary approach can leave it voluntary. Countries, jurisdictions such as the EU that prefer to have more hard regulation can rely upon that. I think in talking to companies, even having standards, you know, gives them a guideline on what they should do. It would help courts from a U.S. perspective, help interpret what's reasonable. So, you know, I think as we wait to see what the future holds in terms of whether we're going to have more regulation or not, continuing to work on the standards and establishing the common baseline is going to be really important.
Now. So, I'm sorry, we're over time, but I did promise the lady out there that she asked a question, and Omar has something to say briefly. Go ahead.
Just on this point about, very quickly just to add on what I said earlier, there's no anti-regulation kind of mindset or approach to AI, I believe. I think the mindset is more of a, we cannot fully regulate something that we don't fully understand. I think that's kind of the philosophy approaching it. And earlier, there's something was mentioned about the usage of AI in military. Whatever we're seeing today, this is nothing. This is like literally, this is not really the usage of AI for me. This is not like the AI that we actually are talking about. So I think there's much more that needs to be discussed at the military domain when it comes to the application of it. But then we need to keep in mind the distinction between civilian and military technology is kind of fading away. Today we're seeing literally commercially off-the-shelf technologies or component being utilized by violent non-state actors and by violent states sometimes, and deploying it in the field to cause negative disruption. So with that mindset, we need to keep in mind it's very difficult for us to just come and put a regulation, because it's much more complicated than we think it is. Sorry, I hope I didn't take too much.
Thank you very much. Last question, the lady out there. Very sorry to be
I am the
late.
lady up there. I'm Sylvie Ouziel, and I'm deploying AI agents and assistants at scale for corporations. So I'm all on the sunny side of AI. But I wanted to come back to your matrix, you know, plotting opportunities in terms of technology readiness and dangerousness. And I see a lot of discussions about corporations being cautious, explainable AI, possible bias, possible mistakes, and so on. But I would like to come back to the military use cases. And we know the US are now developing autonomous drones, which is a reality. It's called Terminator, as we all know. And some other countries like France ruled out autonomous drones, but the very valid argument is that some countries will end up developing them. So what do we think about regulating such military use cases, which seem much more interesting to me than the corporate issues we could be facing?
Thank you. J'ai pas compris. Who wants to?
Yeah, we're talking about drones, no?
Yeah, autonomous fight drones, yeah.
Yeah, it's like autonomous car, you know? They program by software, but autonomous drone is like rockets, you know? If you want to go to A to B, you can say nuclear bombs, you can say drones, and whatever. There is nothing it's not related to AI. The difference, what AI does, is to take a holistic view of the situation and incorporate lots of data and give to the head of the commander a lot of information. So I would say, I will not talk about AI, artificial intelligence, I will say augmented intelligence.
That's right.
That gathering a lot of information but if your question is, they will attack the world, you know, taking over, it will never happen, because at the end of the day, we're the boss, and they are the chief of staff.
Yes, thank you very much. That's a very good conclusion. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the audience. Thank you for our panelists. And let's give a round of applause.